are cutting the selector stop notches. This is the notch that stops your selector lever from moving, going up and down. There's two on a fully automatic AK. The top one is for fully auto, the bottom is semi-automatic. For most of my semi-automatic builds, I just put the lower mark on there for simplicity. I'm going to go over how I cut these and what angle I cut them at. The way I like to cut my selector stops is to where when the dimple goes down into the hole, it's at the same time hitting the selector stop. So I like to cut my selector dimples at the right height to where it'll also be hitting the selector stop, so that they're reinforced with each other. Okay, I'm going to go over how you set one up. Here's the simplest way I've found to really just scribe a line without much work or much measuring. Put your selector stop in to your receiver. Get it ready. Now don't move this down just yet. Then I take the selector stop and put it where it would need to be held in place. You can put nuts and bolts in there to hold it in place while you're doing it. But basically, then I take this lever and work it down to where it stops with this selector. This indent right here will actually scribe a line for you on the side of the receiver. So the indent that will stop in the notch we're cutting will scribe a line where it needs to be, the way I like to set them. So I'm going to do that right now. See where this line that's been scribed by the selector itself stops? I like that stop to be in the middle of my cut. Depending on the AK variant, the thickness will be a little different, and these selector stops will actually be a little different. Your generic stops will work for any AK though, but I know the thickness I'm going for, and I also know the thickness of my wheel. So the method I use is to put the bottom of the wheel at the end of that mark and then make my total thickness. So measure the width of your cutter and make sure that you're going to be able to make that cut thick enough to where this dimple will be able to go down into it. So making the angle correct is also important, because you see how this runs as an arc. So they actually cut those at an angle. Now another easy way I found to set up the machine to cut at an angle is to just simply put your selector stop on there again, hold it in the right place, and then just let it hit. Okay? Now, then to mount it on the vise, I'm going to match the same angle, because I want my notch cut in that same angle as this selector's running. So all I've got to do when I put it in my vise is use that as my level edge. Make sure you don't move it when you put it in there. Then just remove your selector. So in review, I used the selector stop and the selector itself to scribe a line on the side of the receiver. Where that line ends is where I like to put my notch for the selector. You need to measure the thickness of your cutting wheel, or whatever you're using to cut this with, to make sure that you move it far enough up and down to give you the desired width of your cut. Also, the diameter of your grinding wheel or your cutter will determine how wide it is as the length of the receiver. So now I'm going to square it up with my scribed line.